The Kent School District Board meetings are held in public on the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month at 7 p.m. at the Administration Center in accordance to the Washington State Open Public Meetings Act. Regular meetings include presentations and reports dealing with district operations, as well as time set aside for public comment. Now, here are your Kent School District Board of Directors. Welcome to tonight's board meeting.
Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. I have asked, we have several Kentwood students here this evening, and I have asked Spencer McLaughlin to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you, Spencer. All right. This is a meeting of the board, which is held in public to comply with the Open Public Meetings Act, and we allow opportunity for public comments later on the agenda. If you would like to speak, if you would like to speak to an agenda item, please indicate that on the card. It's a blue and white card with a blue border in the back of the table, in the back, and bring it up to the dais. Please indicate on the card, and your name will be called at that portion of the agenda. You will have 3 minutes to speak. If you'd like to speak to an agenda item, when we reach that portion of the agenda, we'll announce that we'll hear the presentation of the information first, and then we will ask you to come in and speak about that particular agenda item. Okay, so Dr. Watts, are there any changes to the agenda?
President Venkadas, members of the board, Ms. Halley, there were no changes to the agenda this evening.
All right. We are really fortunate. We've had the last week, 2 weeks, we've been interviewing for a board vacancy position. And we are really excited that we have our newest appointee to the board, Mr. Ross Hardy here. And our next agenda item is for Mr. Hardy to take the appointment and oath of office. So welcome, Mr. Hardy. And we'll ask you to come here, and Dr. Watts will begin with the oath.
Mr. Hardy, I would like you to raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ross Hardy, having been duly appointed
I, Ross Hardy, having been duly appointed
to the office of Kent School District Director, District Number 1,
the office of Kent School District Director, District Number 1,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of this office
discharge the duties of this office
as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
as prescribed by law and to the best of my ability,
and that I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington
and I will support and maintain the Constitution of the State of Washington
and of the United States of America.
and of the United States of America.
All right, congratulations.
Mr. Hardy, this is an opportunity, if you have friends or family here, if they'd like to speak, or if you'd like to introduce them first or say a few words.
I'll say a few words.
Yeah.
My wife and 4 kids are at home, hopefully going to bed in the next 10 or 20 minutes. But they're really excited. They were super excited. There was lots of jumping around and screaming. That's how young they are. And I look forward to, this is, day one of at least a 2-year journey. And I look forward to being here and being involved as much as I can.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah. All right. So we are going to move into our presentations, and we will start with the transportation update and call Mr. Newman to come forward and present information.
President Van de Gosselin, members of the board, Dr. Watts and Ms. Halley, it's my privilege to introduce an outstanding individual tonight who's going to share with you an update on our transportation services. Mr. Dennison has served in his role with the district for approximately 4 years and has done a marvelous job in the complexities of school district transportation. And tonight he's going to give you an overview of the program, what is entailed in the number of miles that we traveled, the number of drivers that we have, and the costs associated with that. So with that, Mr. Dennison.
President Venkata Salam, directors of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Halley, thank you for the opportunity to share about our transportation program tonight. Our purpose is to safely and efficiently transport eligible students in the Kent School District to and from school. Eligible students reside within the bus service boundary. Transportation is also responsible for maintaining safe walk routes and providing them to schools and reviewing safe walk routes when concerns are brought up. We also check them every 2 years. Special programs that we provide transportation for are High Cap and Tech Academy. There's 5 High Cap elementary schools in the district, and so we bus them across boundaries. And then Tech Academy at Mill Creek and Kent Meridian, they also are bused from the entire district to the Tech Academies. Students are also eligible for transportation if their IEP deems it necessary, and we also transport foster and homeless students. Last year we transported about 250 homeless students. And then we also transport for athletics, field trips, and activities. One of our most popular times for activities is when school gets out for athletics, and so that is the highest demand for our busing. Overall, we transport about 10,000 students a day, and that's on 130 bus routes. 93 of them are general education, larger 40-foot buses. We have 37 special needs routes that those buses are 2 different sizes. And then we have 2 routes that are out of district, and they take students to specialty schools, and that's the schools listed there: Real Life, Children's Institute, New Horizons. We have 150 bus drivers right now. We have 6 transportation assistants that assist on bus routes that are for special reasons. We have 9 shop personnel and mechanics, and we have 11 administrative support personnel, 4 routers, 1 dispatcher, 1 driver trainer, 3 administrative assistants, and 2 administrators. We have currently 150 buses in our fleet, and we are adding 5 buses that we ordered this fall that we expect to arrive in December. 21 of our buses are compressed natural gas powered, and the average model year is 2009. On any given day, our mechanics hold in 7 or 8 buses for scheduled maintenance reasons. So it shows that we have about 20 spare buses, but we're pulling in buses every day for scheduled maintenance. And then the remaining spares, there's varying sizes between special needs and full-size buses that are used for athletics and activities and trips like that. For our staff development, our new drivers attend a 4-week training program to get their CDL and their OSPI authorization. We do about 6 classes a year, so about every other month we have a class going on to recruit more drivers. And all of our drivers are required to attend an annual in-service, which many times Dr. Watts attends and speaks to our drivers. And then we have 3 workshop days throughout the year for the bus drivers and monthly safety meetings where we address items of concern that are coming up or any regulatory items that need to be addressed. This is our transportation budget. Last year we spent $11.6 million in revenue and expenditures. A large portion of that is provided by state funding. We do our annual report. That's due November 1st, and Kent School District is considered to be funded at 100% state level, the highest that they'll give us. Any questions?
We'll start from the end for us.
Okay, I have several questions,
Sure.
but a lot of it's new information.
Yeah.
One of the things you showed were costs, how they go over time, but you only talked about ridership in the last year. Do you know how much ridership has grown over that same period?
Ridership has stayed fairly consistent over the last several years. It has not grown a lot. This last year, we did add 5 general education routes, and that was due to the bell time changes. A lot of the dismissal times were at the same time, and so we didn't have the efficiencies to stack the routes the same way this year.
And you mentioned that like about 20 compressed natural gas powered. Are you looking to expand that in any way, or is that just kind of your set fleet for now?
That's our set fleet for right now. The buses that we ordered are diesel.
Assuming like the rest of the 130?
Yeah.
Are you good? Okay. Are the 5 replacement buses, the 5 buses replacement buses, are they going to be added to expand some routes, take some pressure off some of the routes?
It will be added to our fleet. It was because we added 5 routes for this school year that it will just get us back to the same number of spare buses that we had coming into this year.
Okay, so no routes will be changed as compared to what we
No.
started the year with? Okay.
No.
That's all I've got.
That's it, okay. I want to know a little bit more about the transporting the homeless students, because I know that,
Yeah.
that we're required to do that, which is a good
Yeah.
thing, so they have continuity in that portion of their life. And then I know that the state doesn't fully fund those transportation costs. So maybe if you could just share a little bit about some of those challenges?
Sure.
Things that we could continue to advocate more with our legislators for to try to get increased funding
Yeah.
for that.
So the McKinney-Vento Act requires transportation for homeless, and our first goal is to transport on a school bus, if possible. There are times when students live in areas where it's not feasible for us to send a school bus, and so we do contract out to a company called American Logistics, and they have car service that we use for transporting homeless. And we also work with other school districts, our neighboring school districts, to provide, sometimes we do the morning, transport them to school, and then the other school district does the afternoon portion of the transportation. So a lot of school districts, we work together because if they live in Seattle, then maybe Seattle's helping out with half of that. Or we also bill each other for half. Yeah.
Thank you.
So first I wanted to say, I did visit, I believe it was last year.
Yeah.
And you do a phenomenal job of making sure our buses are all kept up so that we can, as we add these new buses, not have to worry that we have buses that we automatically had to get rid of in our fleet. So thank you for that. I did have a question on actually the slide you have up there right now. Can you explain the contract services portion and why, because there's a significant jump in between 2015-16 to 16-17?
That's correct. Contract services has our homeless costs in there. It has our CNG fuel pump. It has our routing software. Prior to the 16-17 school year, Title I funds were used to help support the homeless costs. And now we are putting them in our Program 99 state funding so that the state can fund us for that.
Okay, thank you. And then also on travel and other for the 17-18 budget, there's a significant increase in that budget as well compared to this year. That was? It jumped from 2,000 to 145,000?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure on that one. I'll need to look into that one. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Justin, I can maybe.
Okay.
Part of that.
Sure.
So what is included in the travel and other is not only travel costs, but the other would be his in-district costs for things like food service, printing. So let me see. Which is kind of high. You know, we did see when we were looking at this today, though, that, and I'm going to have Justin look into this later, but it looks like some of our homeless transportation was charged to that other area. So we're going to look at that and find out why, what specifically happened there, and it maybe, you know,
Yeah.
get more clarification.
So looking at 13-14 and 14-15, we were much higher than 15-16 and 16-17, and that could have been a coding
Okay.
issue
Okay.
there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. I had a question about how we're working with inclusive education, because you know, as you were speaking about the training, I know in the past, you know, I was very involved with anti-bias training in our schools, including with business departments. And I just wonder, you know, if we are providing the developmentally appropriate, you know, decisions that you have to make, do our bus drivers have that particular training? And are we also substituting for our special students? Are we putting substitute drivers who haven't gone through that training as well?
So the training you're referring to is you said antibodies?
Well, not anti-bias, but I'm just curious about the type of training our special student bus drivers are getting during their professional development days.
Yeah. So actually, at our in-service this last August, we did have John Sander come, and there was a section on our in-service training about special needs and working with students with disabilities. And so he was able to speak for over an hour with our group about the different supports that the district has, if drivers have questions. And they also, throughout their training, we do address special needs and different techniques. And we work closely with the schools, too, to find out what works best, because we know that you know, the teachers, when they work with students for 6.5 hours a day, that they're a good resource for that. Okay.
All right, thank you.
President Vengadaslam, I will say one of our sessions this year involved really an overhaul of how we organize and refine our professional learning sessions. And it was pleasing to hear, not only from our certificated staff, from our classified staff, recognizing the importance of cultural responsiveness, recognizing the importance of social emotional training, and I believe, as you've heard me say, and I believe this wholeheartedly, that our bus drivers are directors of first impressions for those students who they see first when they get on the bus and when they leave. So it is certainly important for our bus drivers, whether it's our general ed population or other, to have training and reinforced skills and social, emotional, and emotional intelligence. That will continue to be a priority.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Dennison.
Thanks.
All right, next on the agenda is our student enrollment and demographics information, which will be presented by Dr. Joel Harmon. And she'll answer questions as well.
Yes. Good evening, President Vengadaslam and members of the board, Dr. Watts, Ms. Howley. It's my pleasure to be here this evening to talk about our student enrollment and demographics data for 2017-18. And we're going to jump right in. I'll give a little bit of a disclaimer. I'll say that this data reflects enrollment as of October 2nd. On any given day, the numbers will fluctuate slightly, and we will end up at the year with our official numbers that are reported to the state. And so as of that date, there were 27,155 students. As you can see, there's the enrollment by grade level. When someone asks, I just typically say we sit around 2,000 students per grade level is where we typically sit. This does not include our pre-K ECAP program students. It does not include our iGrad students for head count. And so when we look at student cohort count, it's a little bit different. So this goes to when they hit 9th grade for the first time. So we anticipate their graduation date. And so as we look at this, the 1970 in 2018 is a little bit different than the number that you saw for head count in 12th grade. And that's because we are fortunate enough to have students who re-engage for that 5th year. So they are added in there. So technically they would show up as cohort 2017. And so that's what's kind of missing, and that's the difference. And so what do we look like as a student body at the district level? Those 27,155 students are all across the board. I would like to provide a disclaimer in the data because we've rounded to whole numbers. Our American Indian Alaskan Native population is at about 1/3 of 1% of our total district population. That's why it shows up that way. And so we are by definition, I think the federal status would be a minority-majority district. We are diverse. That is not a change or a shift in demographic. That is new. But this is where we are. I'm going to talk about that in a different way in a few slides. Here are our poverty trends over time. What's most important to note here is that we've got our reduced price lunch students who qualify there. At the bottom, the orange line are our free lunch, percentage of students who qualify for free lunch. And then the total is where we sit at a district level. It's the two combined. It's important to note that there's a decline in students who qualify for free and reduced lunch. That is great for the economy. That is great for our families. That is not so great for our district. A lot of federal grants that come up, you have to sit at 50% or higher in order to qualify to apply and compete. And so us hovering right at that line is, like I said, great for our families, but a very difficult spot to be in as a district. It limits some of our access to federal grants and programs when they say high poverty. So our inclusive education trends for our students. As a district, this is similar to our enrollment. We have hovered over the past 5 years at around 10% of our student body. Slight uptick, but again, right in line with where we've been years past. English language learners, this is not a surprise with our diversity that we are growing in linguistic diversity, and that means that we are growing in students where English is not their first language. And so they have gifts that they can share and bring with us in other ways, and that will benefit them, hopefully, as they become high schoolers, as they go for the seal of biliteracy. But this is where we are with our English language learner trends over the past 5 years. And so when we talk about our diversity as a district, we've always focused on our race and ethnic diversity, but we also talk about our linguistic diversity. And we talk about our top 5 languages, our top 10 languages. These are our top 10 languages other than English by level. And what's important to note here is that when we talk about our top 5 and we include English, that covers about 85% of our families and households. When we do our top 10, it covers about 95% of our households and families. And so by talking about this way, we are covering quite a few. And when we translate, when we think about this, we're covering quite a few of our families and reaching that and our goals of two-way meaningful communication. I thought it was interesting to do it by level because it speaks to how the trends in linguistic diversity are moving as our students move. And so as we think about successfully preparing all students for their futures, we've got to think about where they're coming from, what they're bringing with us, and how we educate them based on the language, their native language, and what they're speaking. And it's not so much that the languages shift completely, it's the order of the languages. And so the percentage of students who are speaking that language at home, it's different. And so I thought about what else could we talk about with student enrollment and demographics? What else would we want to know? And I think about our class of 2018. We talk a lot about our graduates and what they're going to be. This is what they look like right now. So right now we know that there are 1,970 of them sitting in the class of 2018. And we hope that all of them will be graduates of the class of 2018. Their top 5 languages, as you see, Spanish, Vietnamese, Punjabi, Somali, and Tagalog. They are 37% free reduced lunch, 7% EL, and 7.6% inclusive ed. But then I thought, we talk about preparing students for their futures. What better way to end our presentation than think about 13 years from now and our kindergartners, who are the class of 2030. And so there are 2,032 of them. Their top 5 languages are different than our seniors. They have a higher poverty rate. They are significantly more English language learners, but slightly less inclusive education. So we think about the service needs already and thinking about 13 years in the future. And as we make decisions now, that will impact what happens along their education pathway. So that's it for student enrollment and demographics. I'll take questions or comments.
You want to go this
Sure.
way?
Oh, well,
You always have to go first
I know.
if you don't want to.
I got 2 questions.
Okay.
fair enough.
All right, 2 questions to kind of get behind some of the numbers. The first slide you had on inclusive education had kind of the trend over several years, hovered around 10%. Do we know where that stands compared to other districts? Is it on par? Is it higher, lower? Nearby districts specifically?
So I do not know nearby, but I can get that answer for you at a later date to see how we compare in terms of population.
Okay. And this one's more of a opinion-based one. When you looked at you had the slide on poverty, but it was talking about free and reduced lunches, how they're going down. Do we think that's going down because the families are actually coming out of poverty, or because they're leaving the area and maybe the demographics changing to where just the mix is changing as opposed to the families are actually being lifted out of poverty?
So I'd say it's probably a bit of both. I know that we are getting quite a few families who are getting priced out of Seattle proper, so that shifts the demographic a little bit in terms of poverty. I also know that when we talk to our partners and colleagues in academic support and student services, that the needs of our families aren't shifting. So there's still that need there. I think it may be a little bit carried by some of what you're saying about being pushed out, but I do believe that there's a group. Our unemployment rates as a region and as a nation are going down. So there is some of that lift as well. And so it's a combination of the two, really.
Thank you.
I know in the past, we've said that, or we've had it reported that the high school students are more hesitant to identify as free and reduced lunch. And so I don't know if that's playing into this at this point in time.
That does play a little bit into it, but I know that in nutrition services, they use direct enrollment. So they do a search that links families and households. So it's not even just by last name. Sometimes it's by address. And so that if a sibling in a younger grade level qualifies, then the sibling in secondary, middle school, or high school will get pulled in that way. So that there's not necessarily the reliance on someone bringing in a form or having to disclose that at an upper grade level.
Okay. And this is, just for my education, the language of is it Dari? Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, it's Persian.
Persian, okay. So I'm wondering if we have, because it's elementary and middle school, if we've got some of our newer people coming in with the younger children coming in with Dari rather than having some of the older students with Dari.
I think it is about younger families moving in, but it definitely speaks to, like I said, our planning for the next 13 years of new areas of linguistic diversity and service and ways to reach our families.
Oh, I had another one, but I've forgotten it now. Okay, I may come back. Go ahead.
And I didn't have any questions. Thank you.
No, I didn't have any questions that haven't already been asked, but I did appreciate the linguistic diversity by level. That was, I really did appreciate seeing that, so thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to know how, I know you've only been here a year, but just from your review of background information, how do you see that we've changed in terms of support for our English language learners over the years? I know it's going up, and, we still have our liaison model for our refugee services. And has there been any discussions? Maybe someone else can join in and respond, but in terms of how we're changing our current model to fit the changing demographics?
So I'm not going to pretend to be able to answer all of that right now. And I won't speak on behalf of student services and academic support either. But I will say that our data will have to inform how we move forward and what the needs are. So if you have comment, just
a couple of thoughts. I think that's one area that we would like to come back to you just specifically around ELs. But what I will say is we're funded from the state out of the state bilingual grant that pays for about half of our staffing that we have. And as far as programs, in order to qualify for those dollars, that grant, we actually have to list which program model we're going to be using. As you know, we list a couple different ones, but one of the models is the one that's used mostly by districts around the state is content area EL and support. But like I said, we have several models that you list on the grant, including dual language. But this is one area we'd like to come back to you and go a little bit more deeper into program pieces as well as effect on programs.
Sure, and I know Dr. Watts has talked about making that distinction between free and reduced, and, are we moving in that direction or trying to convince our legislators?
Being able to unpack.
Yeah, yeah. 'Cause
So
that could make a huge difference, right,
Sure,
to these
sure.
numbers.
we have been able to on the local school level. And Dr. Harmon, if you can share a bit more about how we've done that.
We are starting to communicate with our schools, ways to unpack the difference between the two, putting data out that way. And that speaks a little bit to Director Hardy's question earlier about, do we see families moving out of poverty, or is it that others are moving in? So our increase in reduced price lunch actually is where families fall as they move out of poverty. So that is a good sign that their economies and they are being lifted out of that, not completely, but reduced price lunch is usually an indication that a family is in kind of economic transition, if that makes any sense. And the fact that it's going up and the others are going down is actually a good indication that the economy is moving back up. So it gives indications to our schools as well and our programs. Like I said, but it also creates the situation at the district level that we've got to think about and what we have access to for our students.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Dr. Harmon. Mr. Villa. All right, we're up to agenda item 4.0, board discussion and approval. And I will ask for a motion to accept the grant from Schoolhouse Washington for the 2017-18 and 2018-19 school years.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor, say aye. Oh, is there a discussion? Sorry. Discussions or questions?
Oh, I'll ask a question. I was really excited to see that we got this grant and our partnership with communities and schools to support the needs of our homeless youth and families. And so I was just curious a little of the background and how we found out about this opportunity and how we got selected to.
Yes, definitely. Great question. We're very excited. One of the things I'd like for the board to know is that Schoolhouse Washington over the last year and a half, 2 years, has actually been looking at different districts, especially along the I-5 corridor here, that are currently providing or utilizing their homeless services that we do get through McKinney, which isn't a lot, as you know, to see who might be great recipients of this grant. I want you to know that it was Kent they selected, as well as Federal Way. And one of the reasons is because of how we work together. Justin talked about the funding for our McKinney students that are from border. When they come to our board, we do. That isn't common between districts that aren't collaborating. And so they were very impressed at what we do, from training our school contacts all the way through our community partnerships, including Youth and Family Services and communities and schools. And so we're really excited. I know that that I met with their director about 4 weeks ago when they were talking about their final decision, and I think they had already made up their mind. But we're very excited to have these resources. Just one other note, as you recall, we also partner with Kent Youth and Family Services for the preventative homeless strategies. This one, if you see in the brief, really talks about flexible spending. This entity can use that funding for current homeless parents in ways that we can't do it with the district. So this is a great example of a partnership that can really support kids. Case managed families is the way I like to say this. So it's been exciting to do that.
Thanks.
I have a question too. The entity called Building Changes is referred to in here. Who are they? What are they?
They are. Schoolhouse Washington, their main focus is on homeless. If you look at their website, they really work to help communities, but their focus is students that are qualified homeless. On their website, they have 3 key areas, and one of the areas that I found interesting is that the data they use, for example, 15-16 data, they have exactly the number of students that qualify each year, upwards of around 39,000 students in the year 15-16. Out of that, you'll be surprised, over half of those students are below the grade level of 5th grade. So that just tells you how many of our kids need these services, but more than that, how many of the families in whatever situation they're in need that case managing and support. And so I think it's just exciting to be able to enter. This is new. And by the way, there is a program evaluation portion to this. And so as we, after tonight, we'll meet with Schoolhouse and start gathering the details on that.
So Building Changes is the support.
It's the foundation for curbing and redirecting their current status into homes in some cases, there's a lot of other pieces, but it's really changing their current status and building a foundation for them so that they can not be homeless.
Okay. Also, we have some unaccompanied students who don't have families that are homeless, and we don't want them to get lost. I know we're talking about families and all like that, but we also want to make sure that we've got some unaccompanied students that are.
Absolutely, and that's the beauty of the 3 different partners, the way we're utilizing the McKinney funding that we get currently, what we do with Kent Youth and Family Services, and now what we're going to be doing with communities and schools. It's that trifecta, if you will, in providing supports that we need to our families.
I know Communities and Schools is very excited about having
Absolutely,
now a
they are.
full-time person.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay. At this point, I'd like to ask for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the grant from Schoolhouse Washington, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Okay, motion passes. Next up, 5.0, the consent agenda. I'll ask the board if anyone would like to pull an agenda item for discussion.
I was going to pull 5.04 and 5.05 because I have a construction-related question.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry, Agda, 5.04 and
5.05.
05, okay. Okay, I'd like to also pull 5.08. So I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 5.04, 5.05, and 5.08.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favors? Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right, 5.04, Agda.
And I could include 5.05 if that works in
Okay,
my
sure.
question. My question is really around construction costs and future construction costs. And I was really pleased to see, and I know like with the change orders that we budget for those to happen. And this change order, we are way under what we've budgeted, so that's good. And then I was really pleased to see that the Park Orchard multipurpose room came in a little bit under what we were thinking it would. But then when I was just at the WASDA Region 2 meeting, a nearby district was sharing that their construction costs for their projects have been much higher all of a sudden, and concern about being able to do what they wanted to do. So I just kind of wanted to know sort of where we think we are with construction costs and the impact.
So the volatility is there based upon the size of the project oftentimes. And so the bigger the project is, the more likely it is that you get more bidders on those projects. We were pleased that this time we had 4 bidders on the Park Orchard project. If you remember Grass Lake, same project, exactly with a multipurpose room, only 2 bidders. And as you mentioned, that project came in slightly over the estimate. This one came in under. They were estimated exactly the same. And how far apart? 2 weeks?
Yep, 2 weeks.
2 weeks and a bid, yeah. So that changes some. Dave may be able to add some to that from his perspective, too.
And then you're absolutely right. The prices are starting to escalate a little bit, as we know. I mean, there's 60 tower cranes in the city of Seattle. And I can understand some concerns with that one. The one nice thing that we saw in this last round of bids is that all 4 came in at less than 1% difference. So you have to think about that. So, usually you have a spike, a high number, a low number, a middle number. These are all within realm.
Thank you.
We do 5.05?
Chairman, you can stay. I'm sure you have the next 2 as
right.
well, so thank you.
All right. Yes, regarding vouchers, we don't need an answer right now, but I just noticed that on page 5 and page 10, for example, I didn't quite understand how we're breaking out our expenses for AlloView in particular. And so I'm hoping that doesn't have to happen now, but I'd like to understand how this program is working or not, and what exactly is our commitment in keeping it or not keeping it, and how are the funds going to be expended, and for how much longer? So that's a lot of questions.
Those questions
So we can
we'll be
come
able
back
to
on
resolve.
that.
So we will pull that information out after I have a chance to look at what you were seeing and bring back to you the information about AlloView.
Okay, and also ask about the FM systems. I don't know what that is, but
Pardon me, say,
the FM systems.
and what, can you tell me what page you're on?
I don't know what, it's page, Phonak?
Okay. We'll get that one to you, too.
That is,
Yeah.
okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, so I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda items 5.04, 5.05, and 5.08.
I so move.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, motion passes. And we are up to item number 6 on the agenda, communication from the audience. And we have 6, 7, 8 cards up on the dais. And what I will do is start calling names, and when I do, please come to my right, to the podium to my right, and I will call the first person and the backup. Oh, okay, we have a lot more. Might be a long night. All right, thank you. Thank you all for coming and for speaking. We have 3 minutes. And at 3 minutes, you'll hear a beeper go off. And let's see. Oh, okay. And as a reminder, we on the board do not speak or comment on any of the comments you have made. We'll listen, and then the staff will probably get back to you, okay? So first up is Cynthia Calhoun, and then after Cynthia will be Spencer McLaughlin.
Hi, I started a Facebook page called Covington Community Action, basically for Covington to communicate with city council, any service thing. And one thing that somebody put on it was that they had tried to donate to the school lunch program, just whatever student needed it. When they called, the person acted like they were nuts, didn't know anything about it. They were very discouraging. So the conversation went on about this. And I was really happy to note that it was more information sharing and, trying to resolve it than anybody trying to lay blame or, get nasty. So it was very nice. And a lot of people shared information. Somebody said, well, the staff donates every year. Each school has a program, which we didn't know. So that told us that there was something in place. And so at the end of the whole thing, there are a couple of things that I wanted to address. One of them is, well, two of them actually kind of needs the school board or somebody to do this. But one is, it would be really good, since you do have these programs in place, it would be really good to have a list or something, make sure that anyone answering the phones at the school has the information in case someone does call to try and donate, and has who they should contact if, the person who answers the phone isn't the person. And that's something that you would have to do, we couldn't. The other thing is, I wondered if you had anything in place. Apparently these are, in each school has its own program, and I wondered if there was anything in place to monitor, say this school doesn't really have enough money for the students' needs, and this school has too much, and, just to make sure that no kid goes hungry, basically. And that way, the other thing is to publicize that these programs are there. Let the community know that they're there. Let people know that they can donate to them. And we can help with that, and I'm happy to help with that. And that way we can just make sure that no kid in the district has to go hungry. And that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, Spencer.
Good evening, everyone. And yeah, my name is Spencer McLaughlin, and I'm a student up at Kenwood High School in my senior year right now. And I want to just come and talk a little bit about the new schedule and the way that it's affecting students in the schools. And the big one is on Wednesdays, the day where you all get out a little bit early. And the main problem, the thing I like about it is it provides a way for students who rely on school for lunch and breakfast to be able to come in and get both breakfast and lunch while still going to all their classes, which I think is an amazing thing. The problem it creates is it shoves a bunch of kids into the lunchroom at the same time, since we can only break it down into 2 lunches at the most because of the time we have. And you get overcrowded lunchrooms and a lot of confused and upset kids shoving each other to make their way to the lunch. But I feel like it also opens up a gateway into a bigger problem where part of the reason the kids are confused and upset is because they don't know why the lunches are like that, and they don't know a lot of the reasons why the decision was made to change it. And it's because if we ask our teachers, they'll tell us to go look it up online or to figure it out ourselves. And for a lot of us, we don't have either the time or the willpower to go look into things like that. So I think it would be a lot better if that information could be made readily available to students, and we wouldn't have the problems of half the school complaining and whining about the new schedules, where half of them loves it just because they can get out early. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Roman Martiniuk. I hope I pronounced that properly. Martiniuk, okay, thank you.
Greetings, I'm Roman Martiniuk. I'm currently a senior at Kenwood High School, and I'd like to discuss adding a requirement of future classes, which is to add life skills classes. For me currently, I'm going to college soon, so I'm a senior. And after that, I honestly don't know how to like do many basic simple things like paying taxes. I'm not sure how to pay bills and other things like that. And I kind of wish there was classes or there was like a requirement, so that way as I grow older and I graduate college and I have to start looking by myself, that I learn how to know how to pay these taxes, and kind of know how to live by myself properly, and not have to struggle in my like first maybe couple years and like figure everything out, running around.
I hope you guys can like consider this moving on, so that future generations, they don't have to worry about this. So once they get to once they're in high school, they can learn how to do simple stuff like pay taxes. So that way, as soon as they graduate, they don't need to struggle. They can, they have a plan ready, everything's set. That's kind of what I want to elaborate about. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. Next, Ashika Anand. And after Ashika is Harrison Graham.
My name is Ashika Anand, and I'm a senior at Kentwood High School. And so, as we all know, there is the budgeting crisis this year, and it's taken a toll on the school and other schools because we don't have the paper and other things that we need to learn. And lots of elementary schools are running out of toilet paper, and that's kind of necessary. So I was wondering how the Kent School District can justify the number of upper-level administrators when we're experiencing this financial crisis.
Hi, my name is Harrison Graham. I'm currently a senior at Kentwood High School, and I was hoping you guys could consider just what I have to say. So obviously there's been a lot of budget cuts recently in the Kent School District and other districts nearby, and we've heard, students multiple times have heard that the school is considered 100% funded by the state, but yet we're continually told that there are cuts to our budget, and now we're having the toilet paper issues. We've had, Kentwood High School has had the SAT taken away, and so now students are having to pay out of their own pocket and go to other out of district, like go to Highline, places like that, to take their SATs. And so I was just hoping you guys could consider possibly putting out, like giving out more information directly to the students and explaining why we're considered 100% funded by the state, but yet we're continually being told there are budget cuts. Like maybe you guys could consider telling us why there's budget cuts and how it directly affects our futures, because obviously Kent School District is successfully preparing all students for their futures. And so I was just hoping you guys could possibly inform us about how these cuts are going to affect future aspects of our school and how it's going to continue to affect our possible classes and things that affect our futures, and how moving forward we're going to either continue to have these budget cuts or possibly get more funds to stop these budget cuts. Thank you.
Okay, next is Casey Lunsford. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm mispronouncing everyone's name.
It's fine, it's Lunsford. Okay. Greetings, everyone. So, due to recent budget cuts, Kentwood Senior High School no longer offers the SAT, as touched on by Mr. Graham. This has left many of my peers scrambling to find a way to take the test. Since the SAT is essential to those who want to attend college, will the school district offer the test to future students? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Eileen Ray Etheridge, followed by Raymond Arrington.
Greetings, everybody, tonight. I kind of wanted to address the work session from earlier, and everybody live long and prosper. Now, of course, if you're a Trekkie, I do this. You understand exactly what I'm talking about. It's a symbol. It's from a popular show, and those of you who have seen it and love it, you connect to me. I had an experience a couple years ago when the first attempt at getting that bond levy was being passed that blew me away. I've worked with kids for a very long time and parents from a variety of cultures, but I had a father volunteer for me that there was no way he was going to vote yes, and he did not vote yes for that bond. And out of curiosity, I asked him why. And he says, well, what if my landlord finds out? I go, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to get kicked out. It's going to raise his taxes. Well, first of all, he thought the bond was going to raise his taxes, number one. Number two, he thought that somehow his landlord could find out. Well, he wasn't born in the United States. English is not his first language, and that's what he was thinking when he went, well, he wouldn't even go towards the polls. And I asked him, well, what is your experience with voting? And he said, well, where I come from, there's a man with a gun, and he asks your name. And I'm like, I've never thought of that experience before. So during your work session, when you said having a narrative, so many families, voting families in our district, don't have the same experience in their childhood. They don't have the same symbolism. They don't have those same connections. So when we try to get those all-important levies passed for us to make sure our kids have that money so that I can make sure I can teach my kids and make sure my kids are not somehow getting shorted just because of their zip code. I don't want that to happen. But in order for them to be able to be connected to the wonderful information that Mr. Newman gave us tonight has to be packaged in a way that they understand. And they don't have our prior experiences. They don't have that symbolism, that connection that we have to somehow bridge through. So we have to find that narrative that gets them to understand. We need to tell them a story. I didn't understand until he told me the story. It just shook me to my core to understand that someone going to make a vote would end up having to give his name to a man with a gun. That is not in my narrative, but it is in his. So I guess I'm thinking that's what you were meaning when you said that. And I think especially if we're going to have to launch this thing in February and get it passed, we need to make sure we have those narratives. And we need to include our entire community in building those narratives because our kids' futures depend on it. Thanks.
Thank you. Raymond Arrington is next.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. I'm new at this, so I'm told I can't ask a question or a statement. And I originally came here to inquire on the budget and who was responsible, because I've heard no one come out and say, this was my fault, and these are the reasons why we had it. But I'll be the first to say that maybe I haven't looked up that information if it's available to me. The second part, when I'm amazed at the young people that come in and stand and talk about what they believe in, is I'm a past employee, and I have witnessed, when you talk about capacity in your lunchroom, assemblies, performances in gyms, and I look up and I see a sign that says capacity 260 students. And there's 400 and some students in the school, plus the staff, and they're all in that gym. And I've always said, well, I'm here for the student safety also in case an earthquake went off at that time, a couple of the doors are blocked. How did they get out? I did inquire, but I didn't have the guts to follow up when somebody told me, leave it alone. And I thought, well, does that number mean anything or it doesn't? And I even asked the fire marshal at that time, he's since retired, and he said the same thing. Yeah, why don't you just leave it alone? So anyway, as you know, I'm 69 years old and I haven't left it alone. But anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hi. Persephone, please pardon me, Sketch T.
I am also a senior in high school. I'm also the current vice president of our school's GSA club. And a common issue that we've been having for students, not personally for me, but for other club members and students that are around the school that may not be in the club, of teachers and other staff misgendering the students. And it is a common occurrence, and not everyone knows how to deal with it. And I believe that there should be more of an awareness and a sensitivity to people being called by their correct gender, either by being asked or having someone, having it be an option for different things. That's just one of the few things that I believe in. There should also be some sort of like program that teachers and staff should go through, some sort of training that would help them identify different things that they should look out for with misgendering students and how to be more sensitive to that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Niani Taylor? Niani Taylor. Thank you.
Hello, I am also a Kentwood senior, and today I'm actually speaking on behalf of Kent Meridian. So just because I'm a Kentwood senior, I last year did happen to spend 2 months at Kent Meridian, and I still have friends there that we still communicate and everything. So they had brought to my attention that they had changed the grading system at KM for a little bit, and it was sort of a tweaked system, I would like to say, because the way it was set up was, it's on a scale between 1 and 4. So if you had got all 4s, you would get an A-. But say you had got all soft 0s, which is all 50%, but 4 50%, that'd be 100 and 100. And then the student could still pass the class with an A. And so I was just wondering that, since I know now that it's been changed back, but I was wondering why it had been changed and how they feel that it was benefiting the students and how you didn't feel that it was encouraging the students not to try.
Thank you. Okay, Austin Freeman, followed by Avery Metcalf.
Hi, it's been a while since I've been up here. I would love to talk about everything everyone else has said, but I'm on the time limit. So I'm a junior at Kent Ridge High School, but I'm also a Running Start student. And that's what I'm going to talk about tonight. Running Start, I'm biased because I'm a Running Start student, but for me, it's a great program. It's a great program for many other students. I personally don't know how I would be surviving my junior year right now without Running Start. It's just given me, I just feel so much flexibility, so much assurance in planning my AA degree and going to college and everything. But I personally feel Kent School District does try to successfully prepare all students for their futures, and they're trying, but not successfully preparing all Running Start students for their futures. One of the big aspects of Running Start is students are responsible for pretty much anything other than tuition. One of the big things is transportation. That is a huge equity problem, particularly for me, because has the Kent School District specifically, I can't give names, but has the high school counselors at all the different schools considered that us students have no access or control over the Green River catalog or when it's offered to us, and how we often get last pick when we choose our classes, because for example, Green River College itself has over 20,000 students. And that isn't a good thing when one of my Green River classes starts at 9 o'clock a.m., but I also attend a class at Kent Ridge and that ends at 8:40 a.m. So that means I get to run all the way across campus down to the parking lot, get in my car, drive from Kent Ridge all the way to the Kent campus of Green River, and hopefully then run up 4 flights of stairs and get to my class. I don't know about you, but for me, since I'm the one driving, that sounds like it's kind of begging for a car accident. And I brought that up to my high school counselor, and she said, well, you signed a contract that said you would resolve all conflicts. And I'm like, well, then why last year, in this specific high school class that I'm taking, did you allow other students to leave their class 5 minutes early, but now you're not letting me leave 5 minutes early? And then she said, oh, it's because, I can't give names here, but it's because of the Kent Ridge administration, and I'll use that term. And for me, that really particularly bothered me, because you're letting students last year have this opportunity, but now you're not letting me. Additionally, why why is the Kent School District stigmatizing the program? Why are you not giving equal access information? For example, I've kind of known since 8th and 9th grade that this was what I wanted to do. So in 9th grade, I tried to meet with my counselor and say, hey, I'd like to have access. I'd like to know about this program. What specifically do I need to prepare now? And she said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about that. And I was like, what? She said, I'm under rules and other instructions not to talk to students about that. So I've hit my time limit, so I just want to say RCW specifically says students will have equal access to all AP, IB, all the different college credit programs in all grades. I felt that was a major hindrance, and this school wasn't being fair. And additionally, there are some teachers in the classrooms who are openly criticizing the program when they have running start students in the classroom. And that's a huge, like, why are you criticizing this program I'm in? Like, I'm here in your classroom, and they just talk about how those running start students shouldn't deserve to be in activities at our school because, oh, they're a college student. I don't understand why they would do the Kent Ridge Shadow Lanes here, et cetera. And so I just would like to conclude that running start program is it's a great thing. There's over, if I'm correct, over 300 students at my high school, which is a very high number regarding history-wise that are taking it. And so I would just like to conclude by refusing to discuss Running Start with students, by refusing to give equal access to information, and by doing so many just what I feel is hindering and giving unequal access that is not preparing students for their future and how they can plan and how they can make the most out of Running Start. So thank you.
Thank you, Austin. All right, and our final speaker is Avery Metcalf.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Avery Metcalf, and I am an AP Art student at Kentwood High School. I'm graduating this year. So last year, due to the budget cuts, our art department did not have white paint, and that was very hard for the art department last year because we had seniors that were trying to submit their art portfolios to get into colleges, and some got degrees in art later down the line, but there was a big struggle for our class. My passion is art. I love it. I think it's one of the most important things on this earth. And I think for teachers to try to teach how to paint and how to teach other students how to paint without white paint is very difficult because you need to mix colors to make others. Yeah, so I'm just wondering how you will provide the art department this year than last year due to the budget cuts. And I want to make sure that my senior year and our graduating class and other graduating classes are provided for this white paint because, yes, some people can afford white paint, but some kids don't drive, they don't have the money and or have the opportunity to get white paint. And so, yeah, I hope that we don't have the hashtag budget cuts next year. And I thank you for the time, and I hope that our art department grows and more kids have a better opportunity to get involved in our art department. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of you for coming and speaking. This is undeniably our favorite part is to hear from our students in particular. And I'm really happy to see that there's so much engagement. If we can't come to you, you're coming to us, and we really appreciate that. Okay? And initially I said the staff will probably get back to you, but if there are specific questions that we can answer and you have left your contact information, I'm sure they will get back to you, okay? Thank you so much. And so now we are to the superintendent's report session, and I will turn it over to Dr. Watts.
Okay. Thank you, President Venkatachalam, again, members of the board, Ms. Holly, and students, staff, friends, the Kent community. First of all, I want to share with you that this week is an opportunity for celebration, similar to what our students and many of our staff have discussed this evening. It is referred to as Discover You Week. And this week, in a partnership with our Puget Sound ESD and several of our districts in the South Puget Sound area, we are focusing on 5 days that have a theme, and today's theme happens to be College Gear Day. And so while we do have, in spirit, everyone here is representing their college or university, but in truth, Director DeBruller has Washington State University.
Go Cougs.
Loud and proud.
Yes.
And we appreciate that. For the remainder of the week, Community Heroes Day is for tomorrow to showcase careers of schools, your particular university's alumni, and Friday is Flash Forward Friday for students to cut out signs showing their future goals. Again, symbolic and a very real focus on successfully preparing all students, that's each and every student, for his or her future. So we appreciate each and every student and staff member's participation. This past week, I had the opportunity to visit Kent Lake High School and toured classrooms with the, not a new principal, not new to the role, but new to Kent Lake High School, Principal Heidi Maurer and I walked through classes. I was able to listen to her share the joys and the challenges of entering a new school, and the wonderful opportunity that she expressed was that she had served as principal at Cedar Heights, and many of her students who were in middle school were students she recognized and recognized her as well. And the all-important purpose of relationship building between staff, students, and community members and family is so important, and it certainly makes the teaching and learning environment easier and more effective. I also had the opportunity to spend time with my mentee who, as we know, one size will never fit all in public education. And while he has found his path to future success, it may have taken him longer than what he originally planned, and still he is on track to graduate and participate in the winter ceremony this year. And so I do look forward to, again, keeping that relationship every Thursday, but also keeping in mind that reinforcement, that positive, even 1 week or sometimes 2 per week to say, you can do it, and as a reminder, and how can I help? And I look forward to celebrating that day with him and his family in December. I'd also like to thank entire staff, those who teach, those who support those who teach. And the reason why we exist are our students who are in front of us. And today, we actually were able to share our campus with several leaders from across the region, those who were responsible for technology and data acquisition and data visualization. And what I mean by that, if you recall last board meeting, we approved the Light Touch grant from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And through the charge and challenge from Dr. Harmon and staff, she facilitated a collaborative effort to learn how to use a powerful data tool called Tableau. And for those of you who may not be familiar, you've actually seen it several times. Whenever you see the data presentations for discipline or safety services, those images and visualization of data are captured and created through Tableau. And there are other ways that we can use data and the information from it to help us drive our school improvement efforts and to share information that's important for every aspect of our school communities. So over the next 3 days, leaders from Auburn School District, Highline Public Schools, our very own accountability and assessment team from Kent School District, Renton School District, Seattle Public Schools, Vancouver School District, and the Treehouse nonprofit organization will learn how best to use these data and more effectively reach and teach and support our students. And I look forward to seeing them as well, and more importantly, the fruits of their efforts. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. All right, would then anyone like to begin?
I'll start. This is the time we share anything we've done in the last couple of weeks. We were busy interviewing candidates, reading applications and candidates, and we're very happy to have Ross with us now. Yesterday I was in shorts and sandals in 102 temperature in Long Beach, California, and I've never been so glad to get home and put on my socks and my sweatshirt. So my sister's having her second hip replacement, so I've been out for about a week. I've got 3 mentees. I'm meeting with my college mentee tomorrow morning. I meet with her about every other week. This is my 3rd year with her. She was a senior here a couple years ago, and this is her 2nd year in college. I'm also meeting with my elementary school mentee tomorrow. And Dr. Watts, you talked about your mentee trying to find path. And that's my middle mentee. My high school mentee right now is looking at some alternate pathways to get her credits. And so that's what we're working on at this point in time. So, and tomorrow night, Ogden and I are going to go to Kent Ridge High School for their concert, and was it
Jazz and drumline.
Drumline. We've talked about drumlines before, so I'm looking forward to that since I was in music for a long time. So that's it.
Well, I'll go ahead and give my legislative report and then go into my regular board report. So legislatively, and I'm realizing I'll need to send you some things Ross had sent out lately. So I did send you all that link to the McCleary hearing that happened, if you're interested in listening to that. And we don't know when the Supreme Court will be deciding on that, but we're all waiting to hear what the response is, obviously. And then also Jessica from WASDA who's a lobbyist, was sharing that the legislative priorities that were the result of the Legislative Assembly should be coming out soon. And again, as in the past, WASDA is working with the other associations and organizations to sort of have a joint message. And she did say that social emotional and each and every child really sort of bubbled up to the top in a lot of the priorities that were picked at Legislative Assembly. So I'm really excited to see what that document is with our priorities for the next session. And then also, I wanted to know if you all wanted me to move forward with trying to schedule a meeting with some of our key legislators before the session happens, and with the caveat that I might not be here to facilitate that, but I will go ahead and setting that up if you all think that that would be a good idea before the session starts. So, okay, great. And then for my regular report then, I wanted to share that I was just on Saturday at the Washington State PTA Legislative Assembly, and it was great to be back there with PTA colleagues and as they were going through their process of identifying priorities. And so I was part of a panel with other school board directors where we were sharing tips to parents about how to be better advocates with their school boards. And it was very rewarding seeing their interest, and I saw a lot of future school board directors out in the audience too, so that went really well, and they enjoyed that. And then briefly then I'll mention the regional meeting that I had sent you all notes, sort of my summary notes and all the handouts that were provided. And Ross, this is something that WASDA does, has the regional meetings a couple times a year. And so it's a great opportunity for us to network with other school board directors from the region and learn. And so I'll make sure I get those notes and handouts to you. And of course, as an early learning person, the highlight for me was to tour Renton School District's beautiful 5-year-old early learning building. And one of the really wonderful things about it was that the playground, it's built for children of all abilities. So if children are in wheelchairs or have other disabilities, physical disabilities, they're still able to participate. And it was a partnership with the City of Renton and another entity, and so that it's used as a community playground when school's not in session too. So that was beautiful. And then the main focus of the conversation was around student safety and staff safety, and it just was very timely with us having that lockdown at Kentwood this week. And one of the topics was discussed was around assessing threats when threats are made, and a lot of resources through WASDA. We can access that if that's an area that I know we do. That's one of our strengths, but a lot of resources that WASDA has in that area if we're interested. And then lastly, I'll mention the presentation from OSPI. It was Assistant Superintendent of Special Education, so I know you'd be really interested, Ross. And one of the things that she shared about that I'm interested in finding out if there would be an impact for us and our students is the way that, let's see, make sure I get this right. The way that IDEA federal rule changes for significant disproportionality designations could have a significant impact because of the way the designation issue is explaining that there's going to be a lot more school districts in Washington that would get the designation and then would have to shift a percentage of their special ed dollars to general education. And since we don't, many of us, probably all of our districts don't have enough dollars to fund our special education, that was a concern that she expressed. So something for us to be thoughtful about if that's going to have an impact on our students. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
So first, I'd like to thank all the students for coming here. I believe you're all part of a civics class, if I right, that is, or not all of you. Sorry, Austin, I know you're not. But I know in talking to a couple of you last time when you came earlier that it was for civics. So thank you for being here as part of that. I also was traveling, so I don't have a whole lot to report other than I will always put that plug in for mentoring. We have so many students, so it's a great way to be involved and to help out at students at all different levels. So if you're not a mentor, please consider being a mentor. We have students that could use your expertise. And I will say that I appreciate how our district does it compared to others. My parents actually live in a different area, and when they went in for their mentoring training, they actually became so intimidated that they decided not to do it. So I appreciate that we don't make people feel that way. So. But I would like some input from my fellow board members. A part of the WASDA leadership program that I've been involved in, we have to do a project. And my project is on what I chose was how we can share learnings with each other. And so I know we've done it a couple of different ways over the years where we've done reports like Agda said where we've brought out, and then sometimes we've done some sharing. So if you have any input on ways that you think would be good, if you could provide that to me. I'm putting together my presentation for that group as far as different ways that we can share leadership trainings and things that we've been at as a board. So I would ask for some input on that. And that concludes my report for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Yes, I just have a few things quickly. I was able to, well, first, let me just once again welcome Ross to the board. And we've had some busy weeks, as I mentioned before. I just want to say a couple of things. During or after, well, during the interviews, I had several phone calls from community members talking about some specific issues that were brought up today. And I just want to say, I don't think the public sees what actually happens in the district, given our limited resources and limited ability to respond to every question that comes through the door. And during our interviews, we had very limited staff members, and it was a very busy few weeks. And I just want to publicly thank Karen Holly. I don't think people understand the type of work that administrative folks do, especially during these budget cuts days. There's a lot going on, and we have limited staff, and everybody's trying to make sure we successfully prepare our students for the future, for their futures. And I think the intent is for everyone at the central office to provide that support to our students, and that is front and center the importance of why we're all here. And it may not seem so, but I guarantee you, everybody's working there, working to their best of their ability. And so anyway, I just wanted to really appreciate also Karen for all that she did in getting the interviews pulled together. She's supporting the board, she's supporting the superintendent's office, and I know also Tech had done quite a bit of work as well to support that whole process. So thank you for that. And I quickly wanted to say thank you to the PTA for having us report out, and also clarify a lot of the misconceptions that happen. And I think it's great that there are so many parents who show up to the PTA meetings, and I would really like for us to have more presence of staff there, because people have a lot of questions, and that might be one great way of communicating to our families. And then finally, I just want to thank all of those who attended the Kent Food Bank, and we raised a lot of money for our families, and thank you so much for your participation and support. Okay, so that's all I have. If anybody, Ross, would you like to add anything, or you're good?
Not at the time, no. Thank
All
you,
right.
though.
All right. Good. Okay, so with that said, we are adjourned for tonight. Drive carefully. Have a good evening. Thank you for coming.